with a lot of issues and questions. And this was further compounded with the coup, in 1966 and then the Civil War. And the question that followed was that can Nigeria actually be together again? That was where the issue of the NYSC came into place after several reforms that were made by the leadership of the military leadership, led by General Kubu Gowon.
Yeah.
And because the NYSC was actually conceived after the Civil War as a means to concretize the federal government's agenda of reconciliation,
Yeah.
reconciliation, and also integration within the nation. Now, if you look at it within the period that we were, and also after the Civil War, those questions that were asked by people whether Nigeria would still reintegrate again. And this came as a means, a veritable means, for the youth to be sent across their comfort zones to actually serve the nation in different capacities after acquiring your expertise in your area of discipline, be it in accountancy, be it in medicine, or be it in whatever. I did my own service also in the north.
Okay.
That's in Jigawa State. And I know the service that I delivered before I left that community. And at this point, I feel that after 51 years of the NYSC being in place, we shouldn't be talking about the scrapping of the scheme, haven't looked at the benefits that have been accrued over the years. Because there are people who left their comfort zones, and today they are still in where they served after several years of their service. In fact, like here in Jos, I know of individuals that had served here in Plateau State, and they're over 60 years. They're still here, and they're big people because they discovered their talents. They discovered their calling in the course of service to the nation. So I think at this point we shouldn't be talking
So
about this.
now you've taken a stand. So you are for it should, the scheme should continue. But like I said, there are concerns about insecurity. People are raising concerns about the essence. How much of togetherness is the scheme promoting at this point? Because now, do you think the essence of the establishment of the scheme is lost at this point?
Well, I wouldn't say that the establishment has been lost because basically you've just raised an issue about the insecurity. I think basically that's just the major issue,
There are other
right?
issues, but go on.
That's just the major issue because over time, before we started having all these issues of attacks on the NYC, the youth across the country. If you come to the north, we've had issues in several states where the youth were attacked. We've had issues also in the south where the issues of kidnapping, overboard. But that does not neglect the fact that the scheme has been a veritable tool for national unity. I said have an issue that the essence of the establishment of the NYC scheme was to promote national unity. And if you look across board, you will see that those who have been in their comfort zone sent across other states of the federation, they've been able to understand the perspectives, the perception, or the cultural boundaries or the differences between the north and the south. And look at the other aspect to include discipline and spirit of patriotism in the youth for national development.
Okay,
The
but
other
now,
aspect,
yeah. So now the thing is, sorry to cut you there, but the thing is, funding is also another issue raised beyond relevance of the scheme now, because some are asking what the essence of the scheme is at this point. If we still have firm beliefs that it's not one Nigeria exactly, and the scheme over time. Do you think? Okay, you said it has achieved its aim of getting people jobs. You talked about employment that couples are retained after service, but then the unity thing. Some people are happy on that, talking about the relevance. How relevant is it for the Nigerian youths? That's the question that some are asking, and then the funding. NYC's annual budget, is substantial, and some argue that resources could be allocated to other sectors like the health sector or other, sectors that beg for funding. And then there's the issue of corruption. We see that allegedly money is siphoned. You ask that this is, and because as I said back then, I hear that it takes 75,000 naira to kit one copper. That's what we hear, that one of those kit you see, it costs money. So now the corruption, and then even some would say, what's the essence when you finish the scheme and there is no job opportunity outside? So I'm going to ask you questions from both ways, but I just want you to go over all of these concerns, like if you think they are valid.
I feel that these are institutional issues. And when you have institutional issues, it takes a system to correct all those issues. We have anti-corruption agencies, and those agencies are meant to police all the operations of the federal government, parastatals, and all that. There are also internal controls that should be created within the system. Now, when you have those institutional issues and the system is not checkmating all those, then you do not give the blame to the establishment or to the system, as the case may be. Now, 90% of the workload being done, probably where I served, probably I don't know of your ends. I know that in the north, 90% of the workload is on the coppers, particularly the secondary school that I served. I got in there, I tutored probably almost 6 subjects, likewise other coppers. So the burden is on these coppers to impart knowledge on the students in those institutions, and not to talk about other establishments that they are leveraging on the services of the coppers that will be sent to those establishments. That means that the government at this point needs to take a proactive action in checkmating the operations in terms of corruption in the system. If it takes almost 75,000 to kit a copper, do we go directly to inquire how much does the boot cost? How much does the crested vest cost? How much does those shorts cost? The stockings and all that. So when you give a contract to an individual because the person has a vested interest or is very close to the government, definitely the person or the individuals will profit on it. So we need to take an inventory into the entire system properly to checkmate how the system works. How do we procure? There's a procurement law in this country, for crying out loud. So do we take properly a careful inventory into all this? How do we procure all these kittens for all the coppers across the country? Now we have batch A. You used to be batch A and batch B. You got to batch A, batch A, batch B, stream C, and all that. The different narrations across the entire stuff. I agree with you that there are quite a lot of issues surrounding, the NYC,
No, I'm not taking a stand,
but that was not
actually
the intention in the first place.
Yeah.
The intention was not to profit. It was not for profiteering in the first instance. It was for national integration and cohesion. Because you knew after the Civil War, there were quite a lot of issues. So the government was thinking, fast thinking, how do we integrate the nation? The best way to look at that was to reintegrate first the civil service, those who were sacked or those who had returned back to their places because of the nature of the nation, as it were. They were brought back to their places of service. Then secondly, these are young youth with vibrant energy. You need to go and have an experience beyond your comfort zone. So after acquiring that knowledge, you have a different perspective of where you're coming from.
Okay. But now acquiring knowledge while in school or immediately after school, isn't that the reason for industrial training?
Training. Well, fine. I also had my industrial training. When you do industrial training, you stay within the borders of your region, right? Probably just within the network of where you're coming from. But the NYC scheme catapults you beyond your geographical location to a different state entirely. Okay. You understand?
Okay.
It takes you to have a cultural difference in terms of food, in terms of culture, in terms of dressing, in terms of language. I have seen those who have learned how to even speak a different language other than theirs
as a result of
in their host community of service.
Okay.
So I don't know where you served.
No, I actually did my camp in Sokoto. I went all the way far north, but I redeployed actually. So now we're even going to...
Because he did in Sokoto.
Yeah, well, that Fafaru camp at the time. But now, I was going to ask you, you mentioned the fact that the NYC core members are burdened by the jobs in offices and schools. But don't you think they're at a disadvantage when because now there are talks about companies moving to get cheap labors, and then coppers are thrown into the mix of this.
Recently, I think it was about 3 years ago, there was a certain reform by the NYC to deploy coppers to institutions, to schools, and also to agricultural fields, not just the companies and all that. So the essence of that was for the coppers to impact what they have learned, to students and also to those institutions or agricultural farms. Now, if you are deployed to an agricultural farm, that means apart from working there, you're also acquiring a skill. That was the essence of that reform that was made by the NYSC. That if you are also sent to the schools, you are also to impart knowledge of what you have learned during your academic studies.
Hmm.
So I think there's a clear difference, unlike it was before, that people lobbied to be sent to the NYS, sent to the
Hmm.
NYC.
No, but what I'm saying is, what I am saying, John, is that now some companies may just use coppers for cheap labor. Isn't that putting the coppers at a disadvantage?
Well, at this point, I would say here that the issue of putting them at a cheap level, you are not yet an employee of that establishment. Once you're sent in there as a copper, you are sent in there to serve. So when you are serving, what you earn, apart from your statutory allocation that comes as a payment, your allowance from the scheme, the establishment is also expected to pay you some stipends as also an allowance. So you are working there momentarily as a trainee in the same place at the same time, and also as a copper. So by the time that probably you get a returnership to work in there, that means you become a fully employee of that establishment. So I do not see that probably as an exploitation, because you are first sent in there because people lobbied. I don't know if you know of that. People lobby to be sent to juicy establishments, companies, and all that. Probably that was why the NYC brought up that reform for all corpus, but still in the same place, because of the corruption in the system, you still have people of the A class, you call them, being sent to the NNPC, sent to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, sent to the CBN to serve and all that.
Mm.
But some of us who are from the nobodies were sent to schools for us to teach.
Is that
But
nobody's?
very well, because I'm looking at it from that perspective, because I always hear people saying, okay, I shouldn't be sent to this state, properly sent to this state.
But what's
I'm from
wrong?
this
What's
state.
wrong with teaching? Is there anything wrong with teaching though? It's just that the
Sorry?
only I said what exactly is wrong with teaching? Is there anything wrong with teaching? Who says it's a profession for no? It's not a profession for nobodies, is it?
There's nothing wrong with that. But the point here is this: if there was a law for coppers to be sent to the agricultural farms and also to be sent to schools, I think all coppers should be treated equally. Should be
Okay.
treated equally. Okay,
Okay.
all coppers should be sent to schools, secondary schools, or primary schools, or to agricultural farms. I think that's cool. I was very cool with it. But when you now have a separate, agenda where certain individuals are given preferential treatments to be sent to other juicy places to serve, that's
Mm.
where the problem comes in, and that's why
Okay.
you see people spending so much money, you know,
To lobby.
to lobby for
Okay.
their postings to be rechanged. During the campaign period, there were forms that were shared for redeployment. Virtually almost 30% to 40%, everybody wanted to be redeployed. And we asked them for the reasons for redeployment. Most of them, they will say that, no, I don't want to serve here. I want to be redeployed to this place because this is what I want. So there was this perception already in the minds of the people or of the coppers where they will want to serve and what they will want to achieve in the process. And that is why laws must be respected. If there
Mm.
are reforms, those reforms must be taken to the letter. The
Mm.
reforms shouldn't be left, hanging where there are loopholes and individuals will catch into those reforms and will want to, you know, buy their way in and do other things differently.
Mm.
So the scheme in totality is a veritable scheme that I saw. It was a connecting period. There are people I met within the course of my service period that till date we're still communicating. We
Okay.
establish connections and relationships, and those
Mm.
relationships are very good relationships till date. So I do
Okay.
not see it
Okay.
as a way of
You, you know
uh,
that's you, but some coppers are posted to certain states where there are concerns about accommodation for the coppers because if you're serving close to. Okay, some would redeploy back home, but some don't have that. They don't have the connections. If going by what you're saying, that they lobby, they don't have that the means to goes up to go somewhere else. But then people are concerned about the welfare of the coppers. And then going back to security, how do you think? What do you think can be changed to match up with the changes now? Because 19 this is 2024. It's not 1973. So and the growing security concerns is a major issue. That's why a lot of people are saying, okay, fine, because you're posting somebody to the northwest, for example, or to far north where you have some of these security major concerns now. So what would be your thoughts on that? What are some how do you think coppers should continue in light of that?
oh, I think basically I agree with you on the aspect of security because seriously, I get so worried when you hear issues, surrounding coppers in the aspect of security, and that's where the government needs to come in, because the hallmark of governance is to provide security and welfare of all citizens. And having been posted to those, terrains, I think coppers should be given a befitting accommodation in the areas of primary assignments, and there should be adequate security to also protect them in those aspects. Because I've also seen gory pictures of coppers posting on social media of their accommodation, and that is not befitting, because you can imagine someone leaving his comfort zone, going elsewhere, and that person is denied the comfort of of living well in terms of accommodation. You cannot go just go to a place and stay in a bamboo house or stay in a shanty, that you are serving the nation. And I think this forms part of the challenges,
Mm-hmm.
surrounding the NYSC scheme. And that's where the areas of primary assignments, I think there should be a need, for the government or those states concerned should provide a befitting accommodation, to the coppers, probably having a coppers lodge, a befitting coppers lodge. When you have a coppers lodge, provide security for them in a coppers lodge, and also to guarantee them their safety at all times. Because in the north, particularly, we've seen in times of crisis where coppers suffers, the most. While in your place of primary assignment, if there's any unfortunate events that probably occur, and trying to get your way out of that place is always a problem. You are ambushed, and it becomes a problem. And also the issue of kidnapping, also we've heard cases also of coppers being kidnapped, probably from away on their way to school or on their way to their place of abode, in the process. So those issues should be looked into critically. I think that's probably why a lot of people are calling for the scrapping of the scheme. And
Mm.
that's why I'm trying to tell you, draw a dichotomy between scrapping of the scheme and also the benefits of the scheme.
Mm.
So if people are beginning to call for the scrapping of the scheme, is for the essence of the security of the coppers in those
And you're
areas,
not
because
concerned
you
about
cannot.
the funding. Like I raised,
Sorry.
you said the funding just has to do with the government checking where the money is going. But because the funding now is also something that is coming up, given that we hear there isn't a lot of money. So instead of borrowing to keep the country going, certain schemes they are suggesting should be scrapped. Mind you, I'm not taking a stand on this. You establish that you are for, you establish that you are for the scheme staying on board. So I'm only trying to challenge your mind to understand why you think the scheme should remain. If you had said the scheme should not remain, then I would be on the opposing side of it to ask you questions to get your thoughts as well. So now the security part. Now there's been some suggestions about instead of posting somebody from the south to the north, post them to where they are from. But don't you think that defeats the aim of unity?
Not from the south to the
Not
north
just
and
the
the north.
north, like east, both ways, they just throw you anywhere. But I'm saying
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, there are calls that if you are from Rivers, for example, the scheme should post you to Rivers. If you are from Jos, the scheme should post you there. They shouldn't post people outside their state. But doesn't that defeat the aim of
Of
cultural
course,
unity?
it does defeat the essence of the service, right? Because what's the experience for? I told you that sometimes you need to leave your place of abode to acquire certain experiences, and also knowledge. And knowledge also in that perspective, in business, knowledge breathes in, business ideas. There are people who travels, and in the course of traveling, they discover a need. And once there's a need, and that brings in business opportunity for that person. And that's why you see people traveling to different places to acquire knowledge. Probably they'll see a need that you that have been in that place, you will not see that need. So if you school in JAWS and you did your service in JAWS and you work in JAWS, then what's the essence of your experience in the first instance? Because this scheme was majorly established to promote national unity and cohesion. Then secondly, there was this idea of zonal posting. Probably if you're from the North Central, you could be posted within the North Central region. If you're from the Southeast, you could be posted within the Southern Eastern, region, and also likewise the Southwest and also the South-South. That idea was muted sometime, and I think that one is being worked on, or is enforced. Let me say it that way, because I know a lot of people currently who school within their geographical location and they're serving within their geographical location. So if you are posted properly outside your geographical location, you could seek for redeployment. And then you'll be sent not to your state of origin, but you'll be sent within your geographical location, probably in the north, in the south, or in the east.
Okay, is that optional now? Because as at the time I served, you had to give good reasons. It's for people that maybe you're married or there is like a health condition. But is that optional now to redeploy?
Well, you see, that's why I told you you mentioned earlier on the corruption within the system, right? So the system now is flexible, that could be manipulated. You could seek for those were the major reasons, actually marriage or health concerns, that you could be redeployed back to your own state of origin. That's back to your own state, just to attend to those issues. But right now, as I speak with you, I think the current developments now, I've seen people serving within their own regions, but it is not an official documentation that when you are sent for, when you have been posted, that you work on it, that you must be sent back to your own region. But those concerns are within, I don't know how it's been worked on, but certainly certain individuals. It's not even everybody that wants to be redeployed. Okay. When I was sent for my own service, I didn't work for any redeployment.
Okay.
Because I knew that I just wanted to just go out and have an experience. And I went in and I served and I returned.
Okay.
So there was no need for me to seek for redeployment. So out of hundreds, probably you have about 30 who will want to seek for redeployment for certain reasons.
Okay.
Probably they'll be citing the issue of security concerns. Probably they'll be citing the issue of language barrier, or they'll be citing the issue of accommodation, or citing the issues of the environment. But basically, it's not every copper that seeks for redeployment. So out of 100, probably have 30 to 40% that will be seeking for redeployment back to either their region or zones, because of the cultural differences and all that. But it's not every copper that actually seeks for redeployment when it comes to the issue of redeployment, as the case may be.
All right, so if you're listening to us, you can be a part of the conversation. You can call 0805-092-0927. That's 0805-092-0927. Or you can call 0705-890-4927. Your thoughts on the scrap of NYSC scheme. Some Nigerians have been clamoring for the scrap, saying that it has lost its relevance. Do you believe so? And do you believe that the scheme should be scrapped and then funds should be allocated to other sectors like education, health, like that has been mentioned? But now let's talk about the role of private sector in youth development initiatives. How do you think the private sectors can come in? Are there other ways that youth development initiatives can be done beyond the NYSC scheme? Can it be incorporated? Even can some, some initiatives be incorporated in curriculums to achieve the same aim that the NYSC scheme is set up for?
Well, the private sector is profit oriented, and only way that the private sector can come in is when there's an enabling environment. And the government needs to create that enabling environment for the private sector. So the more profit the private sector makes, the more engaging the private sector becomes to the environment. So we shouldn't deceive ourselves, over all this, because as a private sector personality, the private sector wouldn't just delve into an issue that will spend so much resources without profiteering, out of it. So the government needs to create that enabling environment for the private sector, to
Okay.
profit in the environment and to also intervene as a way of corporate social responsibility. Because the private sector comes in when there's so much resources or dividends earned at the end of the financial year.
Okay.
So that's where the government needs to come in practically to support the private sector by creating that enabling environment for them. Then I bet you that the private sector will willingly always come in to intervene when the call comes in.
Okay, so I talked about incorporating some maybe vocational activities. Some are saying that work at it at the education level. So do you think that there are some ways that?
Sorry, I didn't get you well.
Yeah, so I said that there's also been called to work around it at the university level or polytechnic level without post-service year. So do you think there are ways that it can be achieved without going for service while you are in school? Maybe do more with the industrial training period or something.
Okay, without going for the NYSC.
Without going for the NYSC, yes. Do you think there are alternatives?
Well, you see, the CWES scheme, I think this is more internal.
Okay.
The CWES scheme is more of internal. Then the NYSC is also the external. So we're dealing with an internal and also an external, activity now, because during your industrial assignments or engagements, you work within the knowledge environment and within the system that is available with you.
Yeah.
Now, the NYSC scheme primarily is quite different, it's distinct from industrial engagement, while you go in and return back to school and acquire knowledge. This is more of expository.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see my point.
Yeah, okay.
The NYSC scheme is more of expository. It takes you from your comfort zone to expose you to the wider society, for you to have a different knowledge of the entire spectrum. I bet you that without the NYSC scheme, there are people that will go to primary school, secondary school, and even the university, and they will not travel out of their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
They'll remain there in their own state of origin, and that would just be the case of it. And it ends there. Now, the NYSC scheme has breathed so much knowledge or impacted so much knowledge on the people or on the youth, for them to understand a different perspective outside my own comfort zone. So someone will tell you that I have friends across the states of the Federation. Someone will tell you that I've traveled across the 36 states of the Federation, got to see the relationships that I created.
Okay, well, how does this translate to economic value? How does this translate?
It does.
How do you traveling across the country translate to economic value?
As an accountant, I told you something, that traveling is part of knowledge, right? Those who travel into JAWS, I have relationship with those who are in JAWS, who served in JAWS, and those guys are dealing in millions. Why? Because they are now transporting goods, vegetables from JAWS to the south. Okay. You can imagine, they came into town as coppers. They saw a need and they discovered that where they're coming from, they do not have the availability of the veg in their area. They made their connections and they started transporting vegetables from JAWS to the south.
To the south.
Right? Even while I was serving in the north, there were those who came from the east. They transported onions.
Okay.
Because it's very cheap in the north. They were transporting it to the east. So that is an economic value to the system.
Okay. So
I'm looking at it from that perspective.
It helps with employment in the system. That's what you're saying in essence, right? Okay.
Sure.
So now, but do you think it should be optional as opposed to being mandatory?
Sorry?
At this point, do you think the scheme should be optional as opposed to being mandatory at this point?
In the first instance, I don't think it's mandatory, because I know there are those who go.
No, it's mandatory if you're below 30.
Yeah, but I know of individuals. If you're below 30, I know that. But because I know very well that there are people who rather prefer not to even serve because they were engaged even before they got their studies done, right? So a lot of people have seen so far so good. They prefer to get what do you call it now?
Exemption.
Exemption.
Okay, no, but I think
Yeah.
that applies to the program you have. I think for continue education or something like that. I think there are some programs that, they get exemption. But then if you're below 30, the law is you have to serve. And even when you're seeking employment, you have to present your NYSC letter. Even in the civil service, I believe that wherever you're looking for employment in the country, that's the law at the moment. But then even if you, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, just go ahead.
yeah, I said so. Even if you're saying that, yes, it's relevant, but do you think it should be not mandatory as it is and just be optional? If you want to go for service, then maybe a reform should take place in that angle.
I don't think that's not yet the law for it to be optional for you to choose whether to go for it or not when you're below 30.
John, are you kidding me
I
right now? Are you not in Nigeria? Are you not in Nigeria? Seriously? No, but it's compulsory. Even some applications you make, they ask for your NYSC certificate. That's the essence of you going for NYSC. It's not just to go and play Ludo or something. It's a mandatory scheme for Nigerian youths. You have to be there. So even
no,
if
no, sure it is.
exactly,
It is.
and it's tied to employment. It's tied to a lot of companies, even the top paying white collar jobs. They'll ask for your NYSC certificate because that's also a sign, the proof that okay, you even finished from school. That's what some would use to verify that you're an actual graduate and not fake. Graduate, even if there's the talk of certificate forgery as well. But then I'm saying that, do you think it should be maybe modified to be optional and not mandatory?
Well, at this point, I think the joy of every young person, I am even just trying to take it probably to a different dimension. During my time of service, you were trying to raise the issue of the age bar. Once you're below 30, it's mandatory for you, to go for your service. But if you look at the camps across the federation, you will discover that there are people by just mere looking at them that this person is above
I
30.
saw that in camp.
No,
No,
very
but
well,
you
because
can't
I
say
my
for sure. If some people just look mature, it doesn't mean that they are 40 or 45 in
no,
camp.
because there's someone, my roomie, like during the camp, right? That guy was almost 40 plus,
No,
right?
did he tell?
Then he told me that why he came for service because his friends were making jest of him,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That he didn't go to school and he didn't serve. So he's a businessman.
Okay.
So what's his concern about serving? So he now said that he had to do that to prove to them that he went to school and he served. And that
Okay.
was what brought him for service.
And then the officials didn't check. They didn't go
The
with the
point here
law
is
to.
this.
Yeah.
Once you do your affidavit and you change your date of birth, the credentials you submit to the authority, that's what they work on it.
So now let's deviate a bit. Now you've raised something about this age affidavit thing. How do you think it can be checked? Because Nigerians just swear affidavit now for everything. You want to do your passport or any other documents, you just go and swear affidavit in court. You can even change your age to 70, 18, whatever the case is. So how do you think this issue, because now this also affects how the verification process of the scheme as well. So how do you think this can be checked?
First, systemic, the system must prove. Like if I go for someone who's by physical verification, right? If I go for an affidavit and I tell you that I am 20 or I'm 25, I think the officials should be able to tell me that, guy, we cannot do this because I know that you're above this age.
Is it written on the face?
Very that no no very well. That should be the case there,
Yeah.
right? Now, when you go to the point of entrance, also for the verification for your NYC, because some would say, "Are you the one that gave birth to me?" I've heard those cases. I'm
Yeah.
telling you that I am 20 or I'm 25 or I'm 30, and you are telling me that I'm above. Are you the one that gave birth to me? Now,
Okay.
the system has made it in such a way that once you come to the table and you say that this is my age, and you make your own declaration and it's accepted, So there should be the system must correct that. So
Okay.
there must be these orientations, unlike other climes. In other climes, if you are claiming to be this, they will tell you clearly that no, we know that from your facial outlook, you are above this age. So I believe that we have quite a lot of things to do in Nigeria, quite a
Okay.
lot of
But
adjustments, quite a lot of system.
going by the reality now, the law is it is mandatory. So do you think that that should be looked into to make it optional for Nigerians that are not looking to serve but are actual graduates?
You see, I'm not trying to avoid your question to make the system, the NYC scheme optional, but I'm looking at the benefits, right? In terms of the engagement, as the case may be. And then if you look at this, it helps even the graduates to prepare them for life after graduation. And it provides even a greater employment opportunity for the youth. Now, for someone who has been home and you do not know the next step to take after graduation, probably because of your expertise, if you are sent to a place, you start up from there. It
Mm.
doesn't make sense after graduation and you stay home without doing anything. But after graduation, because you are good in what you do, and the establishment sees it as an opportunity to catch up with you, they'll retain you.
Mm.
And beyond that, if you have a business orientation, also gives you an opportunity to see a need in that community. Probably with the startup capital you earn. I've seen couples that have saved enough during their service year to
Mm.
even start up something.
Yeah, so we'll wrap this up with how you think couples should even manage themselves during the service year. But now,
Sorry?
how relevant are the camp trainings? You've talked about the PPA. Now, the military camp trainings. How relevant is it? How does it help with the day-to-day hustle? Hello, good morning. Good morning. Hello. All right. So now you talked about the PPA. You established the relevance in your opinion. So now, what about the military trainings and punishments that coppers get in camps? The 3 weeks camp. What's the relevance of that? Hello. Yeah. So John, over to you. What's the relevance of the training? Because some people too are saying that during camp, I witnessed once where a girl was brutally punished. Like I said, I'm not taking sides. I'm just asking, like, how that applies to no, because she did something with her friends, and early in the morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello?
Good morning to you. Hello, good morning. All right, so please call 0805 092 0927. That's 0805 092 0927 or 0705 890 4927. We're looking at the relevance of the NYSC scheme in the wake of everything going on in the country. Set up during the Yakubu Gowon regime in the 70s, we're down to 2024, and some Nigerians are pushing that it should be scrapped, as opposed to the reps calling for more funding and coppers pushing for the implementation of the 77,000 naira allowance. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. What's your name?
Okay, I'm Princess Yetunde. It's not that we want to go through, there is a program that is going on.
Okay. All right. So please call into the program, be a part of Spotlight, 0805 So I was asking the essence of the military training, John.
You see, funny enough, while we were in camp,
Yeah.
because of the drills, a lot of young guys were asking how could they join the military because they love the fantasy, the drills, and all that. But based on with this development right now, we were told that the military training was meant to equip us for self-defense. That's the drilling, physical drilling. Fine. Number one, it gives you fitness. Number two, it gives you also an opportunity to defend yourself in case of any emergency.
Okay.
So basically, I do not see it as Probably it gets to a point of being abusive. That's where my concern will be. But I enjoyed every bit of it, the drills, because I participated in all the drills.
Okay,
It was
but
an
do
enjoyable
you think
moment.
that it's something that should be done lightly? Because waking up
No,
3 a.m., 4 a.m. early in the morning, up north to go for monthly exits, do you think that it should be done in a mild way now?
that's why they call it regimentary. It was a regimentary military camp for just the 3 weeks. I think that we're trying to just make case out of nothing. Like
Mm.
in other climes, you have to serve in the military, right? Probably a year or two.
Okay.
You have to serve in the military. For you, because we're not taking it physical, because I
Serve in the
know there were
military to do
concerns that were
what?
raised.
Serve in the military to be
Because
an accountant? I don't get what climb.
I said, like in other countries, like in the US and even in the UK,
Okay.
you have to serve in the military. In Israel, you have to serve in the military. It's the sign of patriotism. You'll be given a full military training. That's why you have reserve in those climes. They are not fully military personnel, but they are kept as reserve
I don't
in case
understand.
of any
Is this
emergency.
mandatory after you graduate? I don't think I've
Yes,
never heard
yes,
of that before. Is it
yes.
mandatory after you graduate from university?
It's
You serve with
mandatory.
the military for 1 year.
Yes, it's mandatory. It's
Okay, so
mandatory.
now you pointed out that you established the fact that you're concerned about security. Just as we begin to wrap this up, and
Sorry,
accommodation.
I didn't get this part.
Yeah, I said just as we begin to wrap this up, you pointed out security challenge. You pointed out okay, you didn't exactly establish if you think that some coppers are abused when it comes to being taken advantage of at the place of primary assignment, and there are concerns about coppers not necessarily being qualified to teach because being a teacher, you need to have the teacher's training. Not everyone should go into the teaching profession. But now, let's work with the reality we have now. The security reality we have, not what should be or what was, what is at the moment. And then the fact that, there are concerns about funding. That's another harsh reality we're dealing with. And so, what in the wake of this, and you called a few coppers, but there are millions of coppers. The cases you have pointed out are just a few people that they redeployed and they got good PPA, but then the ones that would have to go and not have the accommodation. So what are some ways to go around this, even if the scheme is not going to be scrapped? What are some reforms that you think could happen?
Well, I think that should be first. Improve funding for the system, devoid of corruption, though, because even if you improve the funding with the inherent corruption in the system, that will still be a problem. Because most places if you go to, you have coppers, scrambling for accommodation space because there are no coppers lodges in those areas. So they spend so much in terms of securing accommodation, and that goes to say that even the demands for an increase in the allowances, I think that should be a cogent issue that needs to be looked at. Very, very important. And then also the aspect of the security is also a very critical issue because you can go to a place that you are not safe and you are not welcome, and you will want to, serve there, giving your best because
Mm.
you can always only give in your best when your security is guaranteed and when you also know very well that uh, you are well protected, from any harm, from those angles. So I think these are areas that should be looked at critically. So if you remove, to a point, I'm trying to even doubt this issue of funding as a way because I know the inherent corruption in the system. That the officials, because the feeding even in some of the camps, if you see the feeding, it's so gory. It's not just pretty good. And that's why you see most coppers spend so much at the Mami
Mommy
market
market,
just to
yeah.
feed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you go to the canteen, what they call it, the kitchen, the
Mm-hmm.
camp kitchen, what you get there is nothing reasonable. So, and having this experience, I think most times I eat out, not even at the kitchen. So
Okay.
you have to spend so much at the money market for you to eat. So the officials are given money, but to provide the good deals for coppers, I think that's where the corruption starts from. So those issues should be looked at very critically in order to
Okay, should.
guarantee
So
the
why it's
safety.
been looked at? What's the solution? Why it's been looked
Sorry?
at? Okay, so I was asking that why it's been looked at. you
I said
know,
should be looked
should be
at.
looked at, should be looked
Yes,
into. Okay, so
yes.
there was a question I was gonna ask. I talked about the camp training. So, what would be your word of advice for coppers going through it now, beyond blowing your monthly allowance? As important as the scheme is, so what would be your we're wrapping
Like
this
your
up
line
now.
is kind of breaking. You get.
No, I said what would be your parting words for coppers going into service? I think the batch CC Stream One service registration is going on. I'm getting confused with the but so what would be your coppers advice to coppers?
Well, a lot of couples go into camp with a lot of expectations, and the excitement, is there, but it's not just easy. So once they go in there, they should not expect more, but they should just try and be vigilant to the environment and respect the host community. We've had cases even during my time where the host community was so hostile to us, and we were even denied opportunity to worship. In fact, the national director of NYC had to send in the state coordinator to visit us at Kapa's Lodge, and it was a very big charge to the local government chairman and also the officials of the NYC. In fact, he said that with just a pen, just a sentence, he will withdraw all the coppers from that state and nothing will happen. So, but first, you must respect the host community that you are posted to and giving
Mm-hmm.
your best to service to the nation, and seek out for opportunities where you can fit in and make sure you deliver your best, as you serve the nation. I think that's just very important.
So how about the money part of it? Economically, Uncle, are you not going to advise them to save money?
No, of course, that's very, very important because I knew during my time I came home with substantial sum.
Well, it's
Because
difficult
some
to
coppers,
save now anyway. But how about learning a
no,
skill during
not you,
service?
you just the point is it's not difficult to save. It's a mindset,
What I'm saying is
right? Sorry?
at the moment, if you're living on your allowance alone and the
Well,
stipend that the company or
well,
wherever you
well,
are is
but
paying you.
even at that, the 33,000 plus you earn, you can just plan your program, right? I'm advocating for an increment because it's not easy because of the harsh economic
It
environment.
has been increased. I think the implementation is what
Okay,
is
it's
waited
implementation,
for.
right?
Yeah, the 77,000.
Uh,
That's what coppers are
very correct
pushing
because
for.
I know very well that they're not being paid the 77,000.
Yet.
They're not
Yes.
being paid yet. But basically, very important. If you're a very, very careless person, you just blow up everything, that you earn as your allowances. And I
Mm.
also know that your PPA, there are some who are magnanimous enough, they could like just give you some stipends also. So put that together. It will help you also to save a little as you return to start a life. So once you see a need, it's just develop the idea, get an idea. In the business environment, we always tell people that just first of all have an idea of what you want to do.
Yeah.
So don't think of the money first.
Learn a
So have
skill
an
too.
idea.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, very correct. So and some go into a lot even while they're serving.
Mm-hmm.
So I just pray that they will use all this and to cash in, as we go further as a nation.
Okay, so please wrap it up with the role of the state governments. Let's not leave them out. How do you think they can work with the federal government to strengthen the scheme?
Who?
The state governments.
The state government.
Mm-hmm. Where do they
Yes,
come in with youth development initiatives?
I think a lot of states actually are helping out, you know, by building, COPPA's, orientation camps. I could see that there are befitting orientation camps in most states now, unlike it was before. And
Okay.
they also come in terms of intervening in the aspects of accommodation and also social orientation. Probably it could be different from other places, but where I am, I've seen a lot of interventions actually
Mm-hmm.
from the state government because where the camp was due to some issues of insecurity,
Okay.
an alternative place was provided also for them. Very beautiful and accommodative environment for them.
All right,
And
John.
officials of the state always there to see to the needs of the coppers.
All right, John Simon Kelly. Thank you so much. I like the positivity. Keep the positive spirit up. We we
I'm an
we have
optimist.
our fingers crossed that every aspect, everything will be up and running in the country. All right, then,
Amen.
John Simon Kelly. Thank you. Enjoy your day. Happy International.